Hi, this is Debbie from Organic Oasis in California Zone 9B. So today I'm standing here by our geo bins. Tim and I like to compost. We do hot compost and we do worm composting. And I'm standing here next to my geo bin. I have one here and one here. And we have two smart sack composting behind me, which we're currently storing some compost in, but we're currently not using. This compost here is at 60 degrees. It's cooled off, but it's already composted, and we'll be using that in the springtime. This one is our hot compost, and we're composting, currently adding all of our green waste, sourdough starter, and leaves and coffee grounds too. Tim just posted a video on this, but today I want to show you how I sort through my greens, my kitchen scraps, and what I put in my worm bin and what we put in our hot compost out here. Both composts can pretty much handle everything that I just named, except the worms, because the bin is a lot smaller, and it's a little bit more complicated, not as forgiving, I guess, because the mass that my worm bin, the mass is not that big, and so therefore things can go south very quickly. So I did make a video not long ago showing how my worm compost got overrun with pill bugs, and I had to change up a lot of things. Whereas a hot compost, it's just pretty much just dump it and leave it, and it kind of does what nature intends it to do. It's a lot more forgiving. So I am a little bit picky about what I put in my worm bin, and I think from doing this for several years, I've kind of got it down where I've had the same worms that I had from the beginning. When I first started my worm bin, I haven't had to purchase any more worms. So my worm bin is thriving. It continues to, I continue to have the worms continue to have babies, and I continue to have more and more worms in my bin. So it hasn't been a problem for me to do it, but I've had to learn the hard way, and I have had some issues with my worm bin. But so far it's so good. So follow me and let's see how we're going to sort my kitchen scraps today into my hot compost and my worm bin. So as you can see, this is definitely hot. It is about 100 right now. It's in the green, so that's great. I threw grass in here earlier, and I didn't put any leaves on top of it, so I need to do that. So I'm going to dig down. I'm not going to dig down too deep. You know, one of the things is that a lot of people, especially when you're young, you turn your compost every week, and that's awesome, and it does speed up the decomposition. But when you get older, like Tim and I, we're in our late 60s, you know, I've got a bad shoulder. Tim, we both have bad shoulders. I've got arthritis in my hands. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. But I'm going to say this. We're getting older. We can't do a turning every week, but we can still compost. And we are successful in composting. And our compost turns out great. And even if we can't turn it every single week. So as you can see, as I get down in here, there's some ash here. You can see there's a lot of coffee filters that that take a long time to compost. This is very warm. So that's why we don't like putting in the coffee filters, because they take forever to compost. But as you can see, as we dig down in here, we're reaching more of the soil, which is awesome. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go down about that far. Now, I'm going to put a bin over here of where I'm going to feed. Let me see if you can see this. What I'm going to feed the worms, and what I'm going to, let me see if I can set it here so you can see it. What I'm going to feed the worms and what I'm going to put in here. So first, we have some celery that I clipped to make soup, and I didn't want to put the leaves in. The worms can have it. Some banana peel. The worms love the banana peel. The more rotten they are, the better, but I'll put 1 banana peel in for the worms. Onions. No onions in the worm compost. The worms, I'm going to put in more banana peels. The onions and the worm compost it's just too much for them to eat, and it's too spicy. This has some banana on it, so the worms can get that. An apple. The worms will love the apple, and they'll go feast on the apple. Coffee grounds. The worms love coffee grounds, but I don't like to put too much because I don't want to over acidify the worm bin. Like I said, it's small. I will try to pick out my filters and not put them in, simply because they will break down. There's no rule saying don't put them in, but it just takes a long time, as you could see when I showed you that. So I'm going to put all these coffee grounds down in here. Same thing with eggshells. You need to crush them. So that's a tea bag. A tea bag can go in. That's fine. The crushing eggshells makes them go quicker, but eventually they will break down. And I don't mind having some crunchy eggshells in my compost. Here is an onion. I'm sticking it in this. Okay. Lemon peels. So lemons, composting citrus is not, it would add too much acid to your compost. And remember, the whole science of composting is there's all these living microorganisms, bacterias and funguses living in this. This is how it breaks it down. So if we upset their environment by adding too much acid, it could actually kill some of them and then make your compost not as rich. Now, compost peel is fine, but the actual citrus isn't. So I squeeze all my fruit, and I a lot of times remove the inside of the citrus. And so this mainly is just peel. And I'm only putting in a little bit so I can put it in my compost. But I won't put that in my worm bin, mainly because, like I said, the worm bin is smaller. So anything you put in the worm bin is going to affect it faster than putting it in a huge hot compost bin. So my apples can go in here. Peanut shells can go in here. So I'm just, like I said, as you can see over here, I'm not putting tons of coffee grounds in. Now, coffee grounds, some people say, oh, coffee grounds, you can't put them in, they're acidic. And coffee is acidic, but not once you brew it, because then all of a sudden you're washing all the acid out. We're actually drinking the acid, and so what's remained in the coffee grounds is not acidic. Here's a rotten banana peel, that worms can get that. I also have I made these cupcakes. So I have the cupcake wrappers, but I think I'm not going to put them in. I think they may have some wax on them, so I'm not going to put those in. Tea bags, I'm going to throw in. The worms like tea. I'm going to put that in. And again, I have the rest of this remaining in here is bird pellet. I have we have a parrot, and so he has food, and sometimes he doesn't eat it, and I throw it in here, and that will go into this hot compost. Okay, so that's that. Now, we have coffee grounds. And I have something else that's going to be a surprise that I'm going to put in here. So stay tuned. Going to go ahead and cover this up and just I like to get the center of the compost really hot. So I'm covering it up here like this. I also like to use this little tool, this little rake, which is great for kind of moving the compost around here. Now here's the secret thing that I'm going to put in. Believe it or not, you can compost popcorn. If you're like Tim and I, this is our main snack we eat, but this was been sitting there, it got stale. I don't want it. So I am going to throw it in here. And yes, it has some salt and oil, but it's okay. I'm just going to put it all in here. We're going to put another sack of Starbucks coffee right in the middle here. That's another secret here. Starbucks coffee is awesome. And I'm going to take this rake. I'm going to rake it around. Just kind of move it all over. You can even rake it in a little bit into the top layer. Somebody just turned on a lawnmower, so excuse me if you can't hear very well because of the noise in the background. Okay, and now I have a lot of nitrogen in here. I put all these kitchen scraps. That's nitrogen. I've put in popcorn. That's nitrogen. I put in leaves, grass clippings. That's nitrogen. And now I have to put carbon. So here comes the carbon. I'm just going to spread a small, thin layer of leaves on top, and that provides the carbon for the compost. We'll put this back in the middle so we can watch how hot it gets. It's always fun to watch the temperature go up. So that's it. We added our weekly scraps to our compost bin here in suburbia. You might have been annoyed by the sound in my background, but because we are in suburbia, we have houses all around us and noise all around us. And so the neighbors have a gardener that's out there gardening and using his blower. So sorry about that. But let's do a quick review. We added our nitrogen to the compost. In coffee grounds, we added food scraps. These are all nitrogen sources. And the popcorn is actually both nitrogen and carbon. And then our leaves we added as just a carbon source. So we have a nice balanced hot compost pile. It's already heating back up. I'm watching this. It's already up to almost 100 again. So our compost bin is nice and hot. And we've got temperatures now at night into the mid 30s, low 40s here. So to have a compost bin up in the hundreds is a pretty spectacular scientific event here. Simply because it is scientific. So it's really interesting and fun for me anyway to do hot composting. Not only is it great for our environment and for sustainability, but it's just fun to play around with it and watch how things break down and then adding all that richness back into your garden. It's really a fulfilling process for me. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to the worm bin and let's add this to the worm bin and we'll check in on the worm bin. So here we are at the worm factory. And I have not harvested a bin for a while, but I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm just going to show you. We'll add our food scraps. I have heat on this bin, and right now it's showing the temperature 67 degrees, which is great. So let me move you in here so you can see while I add the food to the worm bin. Okay, so I always keep a paper on top. I used to have a worm blanket, but I no longer have that. So I'm going to go ahead. You can see this is where the thermostat goes in. So I'm going to pull back the paper. And I can see I had just added, there's a banana here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. There's banana peels in here already. And tons of worms. Let me pick up a handful and I'll show you. So if you can see this, see all the worms in here eating away? So they're doing really well. There's so many worms. Oh my goodness. They're doing really well and they're enjoying all the food that I'm putting in, but it's getting a little dry. So I'm going to add water along with the food today. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just digging down into this worm bin. And I don't put it on one side of the bin. I put it all over. So this whole bin is going to be filled with food. I'm digging down. I'm going to put an entire apple. And because I keep this warm in the winter, they eat fast. They eat a lot. So some people like to reduce the amount of food that they feed the worms in the when they're eating. But because I keep my worm bin heated, they actually eat just as quick, just as fast as they did when they, in the summer. So I'm going to mix all this in and stick this banana, bury it. And just kind of do this. Water in because it's the paper that I use dries out. It does dry out. So even though the food you're putting in adds moisture, the worms like it moist. And so you'll never find worms in dry soil. You're always going to find worms in moist soil. So now I'm going to also wet this cardboard. If I ended up adding too much water, this system has a drain on it where it will drain out the bottom, which is fine. I put my heat mat back in here. We're getting some freezing temperatures, so I need to do this. So here in Organic Oasis in Suburbia in California, Zone 9B, we are done with our composting for the day. The hot compost bin I add to right now about every 2 to 3 days. We do use a lot of produce, so I have a lot of scraps, and we drink coffee every day. So and I'm doing sourdough. So I had my starter, coffee grounds, and kitchen scraps every probably 3 days. The worm bin, however, I'm only adding maybe once a week. And it's like I said, I collect certain foods for the worm bin and I add it maybe once a week. And I check the worm bin and add water or whatever it needs. So that's it here in Organic Oasis. Composting is awesome. It's well worth your time and effort. If we go on vacation, I just load up the worm bin and I can be gone up to 2 weeks, or I can get a friend to come in and add things to it. Our hot compost, we just let it go. If we're out of town, we let it go. We can get it hot again when we return. So there's no real commitment, and don't be afraid to start a hot compost bin or a worm bin. Believe me, it's well worth it. It's well worth it for the environment, sustainability, and if you garden, putting all of that back into your soil, it's awesome. It reduces having to worry about pests. You don't have to worry about adding a lot of fertilizers. It just makes the whole gardening experience so much more pleasurable. And you're not dealing with a lot of toxic things. It's all healthy stuff that we ate, and it's good for us, and it's also good for our plants and our soil. So if you're interested in these type of videos, also we do gardening videos, and then we also do a lot of cooking videos with things that we grow in our garden. So if you like those videos, give me a thumbs up, please, Tim and I, and follow us. And we can't wait to make another video for you.